Hi again then guys, and so we've got a pretty cool replica for you today. Now, as with all of these replicas, we can't get them exactly the same as the real life model, but the parameters of visuals and mechanical specs aren't too much different to the real car, and it's overall still a faithful representation of the car in question. Now, of course, the car in question is the crazy fast JUN tuned Super Lemon R33 GT-R. This car was featured years ago on TopGear by Clarkson. He referred to it as being like Semtex with a steering wheel, and it's one of the coolest cars ever featured on TopGear, I would say, a program which obviously doesn't feature tuner cars that often. So, as always, I'll show you what I've done to get the visual look of the car, then we'll go for the mechanical setup, and finally out to the track to see how it performs. So for the visual setup of this JUN Skyline, we've got the Type A body kit. I have fitted the flat floor on this one. Now this is purely down to personal preference here, because the flat floor does have advantages and disadvantages. Now the JUN Skyline is of course also used for cornering, not just straight line performance, and I wanted to reflect that by giving it more grip and also a higher PP than the normal Skyline. Now, the flat floor does give you a significantly higher PP and more grip. However, it does drastically reduce your top speed from around 270 to around 220. So, if you don't want to lose top speed, don't fit it, but obviously you won't have as much grip or as much PP. And at the end of the day, this is not a top speed tune, because even the JUN Skyline in real life does not have record-setting top speed. It does around 230, so considering this has less power, the top speed is not too far off the real car. So it depends whether you want it to be accurate or better than real life. If you want it to be better, then you could always use a different gearbox setup to the one that I've used, which I'll put a link in the description and probably also in the comments to another video that I've done for a top speed tune without the flat floor, but you can use it on this same car. So there's a bit of variation there depending on what you want to achieve. For the rear wings, I've left the stock wing on the car because it looks the most accurate to the JUN. For the rims, we've gone for the biggest rim size, and for the particular rims, they are these Rays TE37SL rims, which are very close to the real rims. I think most people would probably fit additional meters. I've chosen not to, but obviously fit whichever ones you want. As far as the colour, obviously the colour is very important on the JUN replica, and there are dozens of yellows to choose from. Plus, being as I am partially colourblind, it would probably be better for you guys to choose your own version of the yellow. But for my eyes, this car looks the most like the JUN and the best yellow for this car as well, in Toucan Yellow, which although it says it's a solid colour, it has kind of a metallic slash pearlescent tinge to it. But to me looks very much like the real car. But as I said, just choose whichever one you want to go for. Incidentally, I can't remember, I tried to look it up, but I cannot find what car Toucan Yellow comes from. I'm sure there are those of you guys who will know. Feel free to put that in the comments to help anyone out with that. We've gone for the same colour with the rims, and as far as the brakes, you can't really see the brakes on the JUN, so we've just gone for black so that the brakes don't be the highlight of the car. You want the rims and the body to be what catches your attention. So that's it for the visual look of this car. Now let's go over to the garage for the mechanical setup. Now, technically you could use racing soft tyres, or any tyres you want on this car, because you could classify it as a competition machine. I've chosen to go for sport softs because they make the car a little bit more slippery around corners, a bit more fun, a bit more inclined towards drifting. So just fit whichever rims you want, really. Obviously it is quicker with racing softs. For the suspension, we've got the ride height on 90 front and rear, because the JUN Skyline, surprisingly for a tuner car, isn't as low as you'd expect if you actually look at pictures of the car. Springs we've stiffened up a bit to 525 and 475. Dampers and anti-roll, we've actually got on a relatively neutral 3 to allow the car to move around, because you do want to get a little bit of body roll in the R33. It actually helps its handling. Camber and tow, we've got neutral. For the gearbox, we've got an auto setting of 242, and this is actually where there's a bit of variation that you can go for. As I said, I'll put a link to my specific top speed tune for this car, which has a completely different gearbox setup. And if you choose to fit that gearbox and not the flat floor, you can achieve about 271 miles per hour instead of 220. So it depends how accurate to real life you want to be. But in the case of this tune, we've rounded off the gears to 3200, 2050, 1450, 1090, 850 and 700 with a final drive of 4. For the diff, we've got the highest initial torque on the back, lowest on the front, maximum acceleration and lowest braking front and rear. And for the torque split, we've gone for 30-70. You want all your power upgrades, of course, and you want to make sure you go for the mid-range turbo because it gives you more power, more torque and stronger performance. You could fit NOS on this one. I haven't, but again, personally, that's just personal preference. Downforce I've got as low as possible because you just don't need it. The handling's already very good. And obviously you want the full weight loss package. Now, I'm not sure how much the real JUN Skyline weighs. I wasn't able to find that information. But, hey, let's just make it as fast as it can be. So we've gone for the full weight loss package. So as you can see, the PP is very high on this Skyline, 657, thanks to, as I said earlier, the flat floor. So now let's finally take it out to the track to see how it performs. As I said throughout the video, there is quite a lot of room for personal variation with this build, but overall it's, regardless of what you do to it within the parameters that I've mentioned in the video, it remains a hugely fun car to drive. And I think, in my personal opinion, the R33 Skyline is actually the best all-round Skyline in the game because it handles better than the R34, again, in my opinion, and it's significantly quicker than the R32. But obviously that's just my personal choice. And as far as replicas go, although it may not look exactly like the real car, it doesn't have the same power, etc., it's still very much accurate to drive as I think the JUN would be if it were on the game. Performance is, as you'd expect, very strong, especially its acceleration. I mean, it's not going to be slow with 909 horsepower. As I said, the top speed is slower with the flat floor, even with the downforce set as low as possible on the wing. But still, 220 miles per hour isn't that far off the real car, especially considering we're running about 100 horsepower less than the real machine. So overall, it's actually fairly accurate performance-wise to the real machine, and it's great fun to drive and seriously quick around the track, as you'd expect from a Skyline. So for those of you who do decide to use this tune, I hope you find it helpful and potentially competitive. And that's it for this build. So I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.